The stars had always seemed distant, untouchable. To most, the galaxy was a place full of mysterious planets and ancient civilizations, but to the Galactic Council, it was a territory to control. For centuries, they had ruled with iron fists, deciding the fate of countless species. The Earth, however, was a small and relatively young civilization, and until now, the Council had ignored it. Humanity had grown quickly, expanding across the stars, building a mighty empire, but the Galactic Council, with its vast influence, did not like the rise of this new power. The Terran Empire's rapid expansion had started to disrupt the balance they had carefully maintained for millennia. On the grand stage of galactic politics, the Terran Empire was nothing more than a challenge to the old order. To the leaders of the Council, humans were nothing more than a nuisance, a species that had no place in the galaxy's grand scheme. The Council had tolerated humanity's presence for a time, but now they had decided to make a stand. A crisp, chilling message from the Galactic Council was transmitted to the Terran Empire. The message was clear, uncompromising, and filled with the weight of years of unchallenged authority. The Council demanded that the Terran Empire immediately cease its expansion and submit to their rule. It was a warning, a test of humanity's resolve. The message was delivered to Earth's capital, Terra Prime, in the heart of the human empire. As the transmission played, the leaders of the Terran Empire gathered. General Alexia Kane, commander of the Imperial Fleet, was among them. Her gaze was fixed on the hologram of the Galactic Council's spokesperson, a tall and imposing alien figure whose cold eyes flickered with arrogance. Terran Empire, the voice rang out. Your expansion has disturbed the natural order of the galaxy. We, the Galactic Council, have decided that your insolence must come to an end. Cease all colonization efforts at once and bow to our authority. Failure to comply will result in consequences you cannot possibly understand. The room fell silent. The Council's ultimatum was clear. The words were not a mere request. They were a threat that carried with it the full weight of the most powerful governing body in the galaxy. General Kane clenched her fists, her jaw tightening. She had seen her fair share of threats in her career, but this one felt different. It was the kind of arrogance that came from centuries of unchallenged power. The Council believed they could dictate the future of humanity without even a second thought. Her advisor, Commander Jackson, stood by her side. His face was grim, his voice low but steady as he spoke. General, we cannot let them treat us like this. We cannot allow them to think they can dictate our future. Kane nodded slowly. She knew the risks. The Galactic Council's forces were vast and powerful. They controlled fleets that could reduce entire planets to ashes in mere moments. The humans had never faced a threat like this. But Kane also knew something the Council didn't. Humanity was different. The Council had underestimated Earth and its people. Humanity had always been seen as weak and divided, but that perception was about to change. The Terran Empire was no longer the fragile young civilization that the Galactic Council had dismissed years ago. Kane's thoughts raced. We cannot show fear, she muttered. We will respond in kind. If they think they can intimidate us with words, they are gravely mistaken. As she turned to face the gathered leaders, she felt the weight of the moment press down on her shoulders. She knew that this was not just about the survival of the Terran Empire. This was about the future of humanity. The Council had issued an ultimatum, but Kane had no intention of bowing to their demands. We will not cower, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. We will stand and fight. We will make the Council understand that humanity is not to be underestimated. A murmur of agreement passed through the room. Each leader knew the risks, but there was no turning back now. The Council's arrogance would not go unchallenged. Kane's eyes narrowed as she walked to the large holographic display, pulling up a map of the galaxy. The Council's forces were spread out across the galaxy, but there were weaknesses, fleets that were too spread out, planets that were vulnerable. Humanity had its own strengths. Their resourcefulness, their ingenuity, and their unwavering determination. We won't meet them head-on in a war they want. "We'll hit them where it hurts," Kane said. "We'll make them regret underestimating us." Commander Jackson nodded. "We'll need to mobilize the fleet. The Ragnarok will be ready." The Ragnarok, humanity's greatest weapon. A massive warship designed to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies. It was still in its final stages of testing, but Kane knew that now was the time to unleash it. The Ragnarok was humanity's answer to the Council's might. Kane turned back to the leaders, a cold determination in her eyes. "Prepare the fleet. We're going to show the Council that humanity will not bend. And once we strike, they'll know exactly what we're capable of." The room buzzed with energy as plans were set into motion. The Terran Empire was no longer just a budding force in the galaxy. The Galactic Council's challenge had awakened something inside humanity, a fierce drive to protect their freedom and to make their mark on the stars. The Empire had been warned, but they were about to find out that the Terran Empire would not be so easily defeated. And as General Kane looked out at the stars through the viewport, she knew one thing for sure: humanity would rise to the challenge. The question was no longer if they could defeat the Galactic Council. It was how soon the Council would regret their mistake. The Terran Empire was ready, and the Council was about to learn the true meaning of humanity's strength. The Galactic Council's ultimatum had been delivered, and now the clock was ticking. General Alexia Kane paced the command center, the dim light from the holographic displays casting an eerie glow on her determined face. She knew that the response had to be swift, and it had to be powerful. There could be no hesitation. Her mind raced through the options available to the Terran Empire, weighing risks and rewards with each passing second. It wasn't just about defending humanity's future. It was about sending a message that would echo across the stars. They would not be treated as inferior. They would not kneel. Humanity was ready to fight. Commander Jackson stood at her side, his eyes focused on the detailed maps of the galaxy that floated in front of him. He, too, knew the risks of this battle. The Council had fleets and armadas that stretched across the galaxy, each one a symbol of their immense power and influence. But what they didn't account for, what they never fully understood, was the strength of humanity's resolve. They were about to learn that lesson. "We'll mobilize every ship in the fleet," General Kane said, her voice steady but filled with authority. "And we'll make the first strike count. We need to hit them hard, fast, and leave no room for doubt that we're not here to submit." Jackson nodded. "The Ragnarok is ready. We've run all the tests, and the fleet is standing by." "But, General, this is more than just a mission now. This is a war." "I know," she said, "but it's a war that we must fight on our terms." The Ragnarok, the Terran Empire's most powerful ship, would be their spearhead. Designed to overwhelm any enemy, it was humanity's answer to the might of the Galactic Council. Built with advanced technology, powerful weapons, and a crew willing to follow their leaders into battle, it was more than just a ship. It was a symbol of the new power that humanity had become in the galaxy. As the fleet prepared for battle, the atmosphere on Terra Prime grew tense. There was a quiet anticipation in the air as civilians and soldiers alike braced themselves for what was to come. The Empire's strength had always been in its unity, and this was a time when that unity would be tested like never before. The entire Empire was rallying behind the call to arms. But it wasn't just about the fleet or the weapons. This was a battle for their very existence. The Galactic Council believed they could extinguish humanity's spark with a single command, but they underestimated the strength of the human spirit. The Terran Empire was more than just soldiers. It was a society built on the ideals of freedom and exploration. No amount of force could crush that. The message to the Galactic Council was clear. Humanity would no longer be treated as an afterthought. Humanity would no longer be seen as weak. The Terran Empire would strike back, and it would strike hard. General Kane stood in front of the massive viewport, staring out at the stars. The vast expanse of space had always been both a mystery and a challenge, but now it felt more like a battleground. Each star was a potential target, each planet a potential battlefield. The future of humanity hung in the balance, and Kane would not let them fall. "We're not backing down," she muttered under her breath. "Not now. Not ever." As the fleet ships gathered in formation, ready to depart, Kane's voice crackled over the comms system, reaching every ship in the fleet. "This is General Kane. We are about to send the Galactic Council a message they won't forget. We are the Terran Empire, and we will fight. We will not bow. We will not break. We will show them that the galaxy will never be the same again." Her words were met with a chorus of affirmation from the fleet. Every ship in the Terran Empire, from the smallest fighter to the massive warships, was ready to fight. The time for hesitation was over. They would make their stand. As the Ragnarok's engines roared to life, the fleet began its journey toward the heart of Galactic Council territory. The final preparations had been made, and now it was time for the Terran Empire to prove that they were no longer a species to be underestimated. The Galactic Council had made a grave mistake, and now they would have to face the consequences. For General Kane, the battle had only just begun. But she knew one thing for certain. Humanity was not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy. And they would not be denied. The silence in the command center was deafening as General Alexia Kane stood at the helm, her hands gripping the controls of the Ragnarok. The massive warship's engines hummed with power, and through the reinforced windows of the command bridge, the endless void of space stretched out in front of them. This was the calm before the storm. "We're entering the outer rim of their territory," Commander Jackson announced from his station. His eyes flicked to the radar screens, and his voice barely concealed the weight of the moment. "The Galactic Council won't know what hit them." Kane nodded but said nothing. She wasn't worried about what they would do once they arrived. She knew exactly how the Terran Empire would strike. Fast, deadly, and overwhelming. The Ragnarok was designed to tear through enemy defenses like a knife through paper. With the full strength of the fleet behind her, she was confident that they would hit the Galactic Council so hard that it would send shockwaves throughout the galaxy. "Prepare to jump," she ordered, her voice cold and firm. A low rumble vibrated through the ship's hull as the fleet began its final preparations. The teleporter arrays were primed, their engines heating up with energy. The fleet's strategic advantage was in their ability to jump instantly from one location to another. This technology had been developed in secret by the Empire's best minds, and it was about to become their greatest weapon. Moments later, the fleet disappeared into the folds of space, reappearing just outside the Galactic Council's capital. Kane's heart pounded in her chest. This was it, the moment that would determine the fate of humanity. They had no time to waste. The Council's defenses would be formidable, but they had no idea what was about to hit them. As the Ragnarok and the fleet materialized on the edge of Council space, the view from the ship's windows was a sight to behold. The Council's home planet glimmered in the distance, its surface teeming with life. But Kane's eyes weren't on the planet. They were focused on the fleet of warships protecting the heart of the Galactic Empire. The enemy fleet had stationed itself near the planet, preparing for any threat that might come their way. "Prepare to engage," General Kane ordered, her voice resolute. "Fire at will." The Ragnarok's massive cannons erupted with devastating force, launching a salvo of powerful energy blasts toward the Council fleet. The enemy ships, caught off guard by the sudden assault, scrambled to retaliate. Their shields flickered under the force of the Ragnarok's attack, but they couldn't hold up for long. The battle had begun. Kane's eyes locked onto the enemy ships, and a fierce determination took over. This was not just a military operation. This was a message. She wasn't just fighting to win. She was fighting to prove that the Terran Empire would not be bullied, that humanity would not back down from a fight. The Galactic Council had underestimated them. And now, the universe would witness the wrath of humanity. The fleet behind her was relentless. The smaller Terran ships darted in and out of the fight, their teleportation systems allowing them to outmaneuver the enemy. The Council's ships, though larger and more heavily armed, struggled to keep up with the unpredictable tactics of the Terran fleet. Each jump, each strike, was a blow to the enemy's confidence. Commander Jackson called out from the comm station, "General, we've breached their first line of defense. We're getting through." Kane's heart raced, but she kept her focus. "Maintain pressure," she replied. "Push forward. Don't let them regroup." The battle raged on, but it was clear that the Terran Empire was gaining the upper hand. The Galactic Council's ships were beginning to break apart, their shields weakening under the intensity of the attacks. The Ragnarok's weapons fired again and again, tearing through enemy hulls with devastating precision. The fleet was like a swarm of locusts, each ship biting and tearing at the enemy, relentless and unyielding. But even as the battle seemed to turn in humanity's favor, Kane knew that this was only the beginning. The Galactic Council was not a foe to be taken lightly, and they would regroup. There was no doubt in her mind that they would retaliate with even greater force. But for now, the Terran Empire had succeeded in their first strike. They had sent a powerful message to the galaxy. As the last of the enemy ships were taken out, Kane stood in silence, her breath steady but her mind racing. The Galactic Council had been caught off guard, but they would learn from this defeat. The next battle would be harder, and the stakes would be higher. But that was the reality of war. The Terran Empire had sent their message, and it was only the beginning. The fleet turned its course toward the next target, leaving the debris of the battle behind. General Kane didn't smile or celebrate. There was no time for that. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. "This isn't over yet," she muttered to herself as the Ragnarok moved forward into the unknown. Not by a long shot. The Terran Empire had made its mark, but the true test was still ahead. And General Kane knew that humanity was ready for whatever the Galactic Council could throw at them. They would not back down. They would not stop. The war had only just begun. The victory at the edge of the Galactic Council's territory had been swift and powerful. The Terran Empire's teleportation fleet had struck like a thunderbolt, leaving devastation in its wake. General Kane and her crew had won their first battle, but they knew that the Council would not let such an attack go unanswered. The Council's leaders were not known for their patience, and the defeat would sting. A storm was coming, and the question wasn't if the Council would retaliate, but when. Back aboard the Ragnarok, General Kane stood before a holographic map of the galaxy, her eyes scanning the red, blinking dots marking known enemy positions. The Council would have undoubtedly retreated to their strongholds to lick their wounds, but Kane knew they would rally their forces. They would prepare for the inevitable counterattack, and they would make it personal. "General, we've detected a massive fleet forming just beyond the Alliance's outer rim," Commander Jackson said as he stepped up beside her. His voice was heavy with concern. "They're assembling something big. This isn't just a simple retaliation. It looks like they're coming at us with everything they've got." Kane's jaw tightened. "I knew it. They won't let us have the last word." The fleet that the Galactic Council had begun to form was no small force. It wasn't just a response to their loss. It was a statement. The Council intended to crush the Terran Empire's newfound confidence. If the Council had underestimated humanity before, they had learned a harsh lesson. But now, they would attempt to show that they were still the dominant force in the galaxy. They would strike with overwhelming power to ensure that the Terrans knew their place. "We need to prepare," Kane muttered, her eyes narrowing as she analyzed the fleet's movements on the map. "They won't expect us to counterattack again so quickly." The truth was, humanity had no choice. Their initial strike had done more than deal a blow to the Council. It had given the Empire a taste of what was possible. If they didn't push forward, they risked falling back into the shadows of the galaxy, and that wasn't an option for Kane or for anyone who believed in the future of the Terran Empire. Her crew had already begun the necessary preparations. The teleportation technology that had given them such an advantage would be used again, but this time, Kane would take it one step further. The Empire was not going to retreat into hiding. They were going to drive forward, and show the galaxy that humanity was not a threat to be taken lightly. Within the next few hours, the fleet was ready. A series of teleportation jumps had brought the Ragnarok and its accompanying warships to the heart of the Galactic Council's territory. The enemy had done everything they could to assemble a superior force, but the Empire's teleportation system was unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. They had no idea how the Terrans had developed this advanced technology, but it didn't matter. It worked. Kane stood in the command center, her expression unreadable as the crew finalized their positions. The hum of the ship's engines reverberated through the walls, filling the room with the energy of anticipation. "General, we're within range," Jackson said, his voice steady despite the pressure. "The enemy fleet is up ahead. They've got the homeworld protected, but we can make it past their defenses." Kane's gaze never wavered from the view ahead. She knew that the Council had fortified their position, but they had made one fatal mistake. They underestimated the adaptability and resolve of the Terran forces. The Ragnarok was built for precision strikes, and that's exactly what they would deliver. "Deploy the fleet," Kane ordered, her voice a quiet storm. "We hit them hard. Hit them fast." The fleet leaped forward in a series of teleportation jumps. One moment they were at the edge of the galaxy, and the next, they were upon the enemy's capital ships. The Council's massive warships, though powerful, were sluggish and unprepared for the sudden onslaught. Their shields flared under the intensity of the first few shots, but they couldn't withstand the force for long. The Ragnarok opened fire, its weapon systems unleashed in a deadly barrage. Energy bolts streaked through the dark void of space, cutting through enemy shields like a hot knife through butter. Ships exploded in flashes of light as the Terran fleet tore through the Council's defenses. Kane's heart raced. This wasn't just about defeating the Council. This was about sending a message. A message to the galaxy, to the Empire, to the Galactic Council itself. Humanity was no longer the underdog. The Ragnarok and its fleet would show them that they had the power to change the galaxy's balance. But the Council wasn't giving up so easily. As the Terran ships advanced, the Council's fleet regrouped, and the atmosphere on the bridge shifted. The massive warships fired back with relentless fury, sending shockwaves through the Terran fleet. Enemy fighters buzzed around the fleet like angry hornets, searching for weaknesses. "We've got multiple enemy ships incoming," Jackson said, his voice tense. "Their capital ships are staying back, but they're deploying their fighter wings." "We've got this," Kane replied, her tone unwavering. "Hold the line. Focus fire on their battleships. Don't let them regroup." For the next few hours, the two forces clashed in a deadly dance of firepower and strategy. The Ragnarok and the fleet continued to fight with unmatched precision, but the Council's retaliatory force was powerful. Every victory seemed to come at a price, and Kane knew that they couldn't keep this up forever. But one thing was clear: humanity was no longer an easy target. The Galactic Council's once unquestioned dominance was under siege, and they were beginning to realize the true threat humanity posed. The Empire's retaliation had only just begun, and the message had already been sent. The Galactic Council would never be the same again. The Terran fleet, led by General Kane aboard the Ragnarok, had plunged deep into the heart of the Galactic Council's territory. Though the Council's retaliation had been fierce, humanity's resolve was stronger. With every passing moment, the balance of power was shifting. The Terran Empire was no longer the underdog. It was a force to be reckoned with. But the Council had not yet fully realized the magnitude of the threat they were facing. Inside the command center of the Ragnarok, General Kane stood with her arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the holographic display before her. The battle was far from over, but their enemies were starting to show signs of desperation. The Council had called in reinforcements, ships that were much larger and more heavily armed, designed for one purpose: to annihilate the Terran fleet. "We've detected a massive concentration of enemy ships at Sector 7, Commander Jackson reported, his voice tense. "They're assembling their strongest vessels. If we don't act now, they might overwhelm us with sheer numbers." Kane took a slow breath, her mind racing through the possibilities. She had anticipated the Council's desperation. After all, when your power was threatened, you did what was necessary to protect it. But this time, the Council had made a fatal error. They had underestimated humanity's strength, its adaptability, and its will to fight for survival. "We won't give them the chance," Kane replied, her voice steady with determination. "Prepare to jump to Sector 7. We'll hit them before they can fully assemble. We strike fast, and we strike hard." With the Ragnarok at the head of the fleet, the Terran forces made their move. In a series of quick, precise jumps, they appeared at the edge of the enemy's new formation. The Council's ships were still in the process of lining up, and their shields were not fully engaged. Kane didn't hesitate. "All ships, fire at will," she commanded. The sudden barrage from the Terran fleet caught the Council off guard. Energy blasts rained down on their vessels, smashing through shields and causing violent explosions. The enemy warships were massive, but they were not built to withstand the power of a fleet that could strike without warning from anywhere in the galaxy. Within moments, the once imposing force of the Galactic Council was in disarray. Their ships, though formidable, could not recover from the surprise attack. The Ragnarok and its fleet moved with deadly precision, striking key points on the Council's vessels before they could react. The precision of their strikes, combined with the speed and unpredictability of the teleportation technology, left the Council with little time to mount an effective defense. "We're making progress," Jackson said, his eyes glued to the data scrolling across the screen. "But they're regrouping. They're bringing in their best commanders." Kane narrowed her eyes. She knew the Council would never give up without a fight. They were desperate, and a desperate enemy was often the most dangerous. But she wasn't about to back down. She'd seen the galaxy's empires rise and fall, and now the Terran Empire was about to leave its mark on history. "They'll try to fight back with everything they have," Kane muttered. "But we won't give them the chance. This ends today." As if on cue, a massive explosion lit up the darkness of space. One of the Council's flagship vessels, a colossal battleship, had been hit directly in its vulnerable core. The Ragnarok had dealt the first blow, and now the rest of the fleet was following suit. The Council's once untouchable power was beginning to crumble, and there was no turning back. But despite their best efforts, the Council was not easily deterred. A new wave of reinforcements, including elite Council soldiers and devastating weapons, began to emerge from the shadows of the battlefield. They came at the Terran fleet with all the fury of a wounded animal. "Their counterattack is coming," Commander Jackson said, his tone grim. "They're pulling out all the stops. This could get ugly." Kane's jaw tightened. "Hold the line," she ordered. "We've come too far to back down now." The battle reached its peak. The two forces clashed in a massive explosion of energy and firepower. The Ragnarok moved like a predator through the chaos, its weapons firing relentlessly. Terran ships darted in and out of the fray, teleporting in and out of different positions, keeping the Council off balance and preventing them from organizing an effective counterattack. Despite the intense pressure, Kane knew that the Terran fleet was winning. The Council was beginning to realize they couldn't hold back the tide of humanity's relentless advance. Their ships were taking damage faster than they could repair them, and their morale was beginning to crack. In a final, desperate move, the Galactic Council ordered their flagship, the Dread Sovereign, to engage directly with the Ragnarok. The massive battleship, with its nearly impenetrable armor, was designed to crush any resistance it encountered. But Kane wasn't intimidated. She had fought battles before, and she had faced odds far worse than this. Now it was time to finish what they had started. "Prepare for the final strike," Kane said, her voice filled with cold determination. "We end this now." With a precise jump, the Ragnarok materialized directly behind the Dread Sovereign. The massive Terran ship unleashed a full volley of firepower, targeting the flagship's weak points. The Dread Sovereign retaliated, but it was too late. The Ragnarok had already made its move, and the flagship's shields buckled under the pressure of the relentless assault. In the midst of the chaos, General Kane saw the truth. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity for too long. And now, they were paying the price. The tide had turned, and the Council's desperate attempts to regain control were in vain. The war for the galaxy had only just begun, but one thing was certain: the Terran Empire had made its mark. And the Galactic Council would never be the same again. The battle was far from over. Despite the overwhelming force of the Terran fleet and their relentless onslaught, the Galactic Council refused to back down. The Dread Sovereign, though heavily damaged, still remained a formidable opponent, and its remaining fleet was desperate to drive humanity back. General Kane stood before the large holographic display, studying the unfolding battle. The enemy had regrouped, their fleet now consolidating in a last-ditch attempt to hold their ground. She could sense their fear, but also their arrogance. The Council believed in their superiority, believed that they could crush any force that threatened their control over the galaxy. But Kane and her crew knew otherwise. "Commander Jackson," Kane said, her voice steady but with an edge of determination, "prepare the fleet for one final push. We end this now." Jackson nodded, already sending the orders. "We're ready, General. All ships in position." The Ragnarok and the rest of the Terran fleet moved into position, circling the weakened Council forces. The Dread Sovereign was still there, its colossal form looming in the distance. The Council had put all their remaining hope in this ship, and it was clear that they intended to fight to the bitter end. Kane had one last surprise for them. "Activate the phase disruptor," she ordered. "We're going to hit them where it hurts." The phase disruptor was humanity's trump card. A weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, it could destabilize entire fleets in an instant. The technology was still relatively new, and its full power had never been unleashed in a real battle. But today, it was going to make all the difference. The weapon's massive array powered up, energy crackling through the ship's systems. The Ragnarok took aim at the heart of the Council's remaining fleet, the Dread Sovereign positioned near the center. Kane's fingers tightened around the console as she gave the command. "Fire." A brilliant beam of energy shot forth from the Ragnarok, cutting through space like a fiery sword. The phase disruptor tore into the heart of the Council's fleet, unleashing a shockwave of energy that rippled across the battlefield. The first few ships were obliterated instantly, their shields no match for the raw power of the weapon. The Dread Sovereign took the brunt of the blast. Its mighty hull shuddered as its energy reserves were overloaded. The once indomitable flagship began to break apart, its core destabilizing under the strain. The Council's final hope was crumbling. "General, we've broken their lines," Jackson exclaimed, his voice filled with both disbelief and triumph. "They're retreating." Kane allowed herself a brief smile, but she knew the fight wasn't over yet. The Council's leadership, still hidden deep within their fleet, would not give up so easily. They would regroup and try to escape, and humanity would need to stop them before they could reorganize and strike back. "Don't let them escape," she commanded, her tone cold and unwavering. "Pursue them. We finish this here and now." With their final weapon unleashed, the Terran fleet surged forward, engaging the scattered remnants of the Galactic Council's forces. The Council's ships, now fractured and on the run, were no longer a cohesive force. Panic spread through their ranks as more and more of their ships were destroyed. The once mighty Council was crumbling, their fleets no longer able to withstand the power of humanity. But despite the overwhelming odds, the Council's leadership managed to issue one last order. A group of ships, including several high-ranking officers, made a final attempt to escape, attempting to flee to a distant corner of the galaxy. They hoped that by disappearing into the unknown, they could live to fight another day. Kane watched the desperate escape unfold on her display. She knew that their retreat could not be allowed. If they escaped, the Council could regroup and return in a matter of years, stronger and more vengeful than ever. "No one gets away," she muttered under her breath. She ordered the fleet to pursue, and the Ragnarok and its comrades followed, leaving no room for escape. The remnants of the Council fleet tried to flee through a nearby asteroid field, hoping to lose the Terrans in the chaos. But the Terran fleet, with their advanced technology and superior tactics, easily tracked them down. One by one, the remaining Council ships fell. The final battleship, the Eternal Regret, was cornered in a deep crater of an ancient moon, its engines failing and shields nearly gone. General Kane's eyes were cold as she gave the final command. Finish it. The Ragnarok fired a last decisive shot, and the Eternal Regret was torn apart, its remains scattered across the moon's surface. The Galactic Council's leadership was gone, their power shattered beyond repair. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy was without a dominant empire, and the Terran Empire stood as the undeniable victor. General Kane stood at the center of the command room, the battle now over. The remaining Council ships were either destroyed or in retreat, their hold on the galaxy broken. The universe had just witnessed the rise of a new power, one that would reshape everything. But as Kane surveyed the battlefield, she knew this was just the beginning. The Terran Empire had made its mark on the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same again. As the Terran fleet regrouped and the first steps toward rebuilding began, Kane's thoughts turned to the future. There would be challenges, there would be enemies, and there would be much to do. But for now, humanity had earned its place at the top. The Empire had struck back, and it would never be underestimated again. The battlefield was silent now, the only sound being the hum of the Terran fleet's engines as they slowly regrouped. The victory over the Galactic Council was monumental, but there was no time for celebrations. Humanity had made its mark on the galaxy, but now the real work began. General Kane stood at the front of the bridge, her gaze locked on the stars outside. The destruction of the Council had been swift, but the galaxy was still vast, and many unknowns lay ahead. The remaining Council forces had scattered into the unknown reaches of space, but they were not the only threat. Other factions, rival empires, mercenary groups, and those who sought to exploit the power vacuum were already eyeing Terran space. "We've made history," Kane said, her voice measured but resolute. "But history is never without its challenges." Commander Jackson, standing beside her, nodded. "The galaxy is fractured. Some will see us as liberators, others as conquerors. We'll need to ensure our alliances are strong and our borders secure." The bridge was alive with activity as the crew began the process of securing the conquered territory. The war was over, but the peace would be a much harder fight. Systems once under the thumb of the Galactic Council were now free, but would they embrace Terran leadership or rebel against it? Kane knew that the next few months, possibly years, would be a period of uncertainty. Kane turned to the communications officer, who had been monitoring the channel since the final battle. "Any word from the other Terran fleets?" she asked. "Yes, General," the officer replied. "The other fleets are making their way toward the core systems. The Council has been shattered, but we still have to secure the outer colonies. Some of the systems were loyal to the Council and may resist our rule." Kane clenched her fists, thinking of the many systems that had suffered under the Empire's regime. She couldn't ignore the suffering that had been imposed on so many. But that was a part of the past now. Humanity had to be the future, and that meant not only protecting its newfound dominance, but also ensuring that it brought peace, freedom, and prosperity to those who had suffered. "We will bring order to the galaxy, but we will do it with justice," Kane said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "The Terran Empire is not here to enslave. It is here to protect, to build, and to forge a new future for all those willing to join us." The officers on the bridge exchanged looks. They knew the gravity of what she was saying. The Terran Empire had emerged victorious, but the next chapter would be defined by the choices they made. They could either rule with an iron fist, as the Galactic Council had done, or they could take a different path, one that ensured long-term peace and stability. Jackson placed a hand on the back of Kane's chair. "General, there will be many who doubt our intentions. Some will try to resist us. But we've proven that humanity can face down any threat and emerge victorious. Our enemies will know that, and the people will trust us. We'll rebuild this galaxy together." Kane took a deep breath, looking out into the stars once more. She knew that it would be a long road ahead, filled with challenges, alliances, betrayals, and battles. But for the first time in her life, she truly believed in the strength of humanity's resolve. They had proven themselves worthy, and now they would shape the future of the galaxy. "Send the message," she said, her tone filled with quiet authority. "Let the galaxy know that the Terran Empire stands, and we will not fall." The officer nodded, transmitting the message across the stars. The message was simple but powerful. Humanity has risen. The Terran Empire stands ready to bring peace to the galaxy. Those who wish to join us will be welcomed. Those who resist will be dealt with accordingly. As the message broadcasted across the galaxy, General Kane felt a sense of pride rise within her. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged victorious. But the fight was far from over. There were still enemies to be defeated, alliances to be formed, and a galaxy to rebuild. In the wake of the destruction of the Galactic Council, the galaxy was now a place of both infinite possibility and infinite danger. The power vacuum left behind had shifted the balance of the cosmos, and the Terran Empire stood at the center of it all. It would be up to Kane and the Terran leadership to steer humanity into this new era. There would be mistakes, hardships, and battles. But there was also hope. Hope that humanity could do better, that it could build a galaxy where peace and prosperity were the norm, not the exception. The final battle had been won. But now, the true test of humanity's strength would begin. As the Ragnarok and the other Terran ships turned toward the next phase of the conquest, General Kane stood tall, ready for whatever came next. The galaxy had witnessed the rise of the Terran Empire, and nothing would ever be the same again.